Sometimes the night before the draft feels like nothing but fan anxiety. I'm not buying that. What I feel here is behind-the-scenes movement, phones buzzing, pieces being tested, the whole picture shifting every time a new bit of league chatter leaks out. And the Chargers are right in the middle of it. Not as bystanders, as a team that can use this moment to raise its ceiling for 2026. Today, we're digging into those signals with the right energy and the right lens, because something big is taking shape. So subscribe right now and come with me, because none of this feels random. Now look at how this first signal fits the puzzle. Peter Schrager dropped his final mock using everything he's been hearing around the league, and when the Chargers came up, the name he plugged in was Auburn edge rusher Keldric Faulk. And I'm telling you right now, that doesn't feel like some random dart throw. It feels like a read on profile, need, and how this staff might be viewing the ceiling of this defense. Faulk is not in this conversation because of raw production alone. He's in it because of the frame, the length, the physical burst, and the kind of build coaches never ignore when they're thinking about what they can develop. He's 6'6", 276 pounds, still very young, and already carries a strong reputation for leadership and locker room presence. That stuff matters more than people think when a franchise is trying to keep the edge on a unit that lost Odafe Owe and still needs to reinforce the pass rush rotation. And that's where this gets interesting for us, because if the Chargers get to 22 and don't see real value on the interior offensive line, forcing a pick just to fill a hole would be bad process. Faulk represents a different kind of logic. Not the cleanest prospect right away, but a defender with real tools to grow fast in the right environment. And when the franchise is looking ahead, thinking about quarterback pressure, deeper rotation, and a defense attacking the pocket all year long, that kind of swing starts making a lot of sense. The sack total from last season doesn't scare anybody who's reading beyond the stat sheet. What stands out is the package, the body, the upside, the feeling that his best football is still sitting there waiting. If this really is the direction, it wouldn't be a pick made to win the room in the first 5 seconds. It would be an inside-the-building pick. One of those moves that makes more sense before it gets announced than after it hits the screen. And on draft night, that changes everything. Now the temperature shifts, because this is not just about who might be coming in. This is about the message Joe Hortiz has been sending ever since he took control of this roster. Fans were waiting for that big swing in the market, the kind of move that flips the conversation overnight. But the Chargers keep showing a different blueprint. Hortiz doesn't operate like a guy walking into an auction. He operates like someone trying to build value, protect flexibility, and strike at the right moment without falling in love with outside noise. That showed up in free agency, and the Tyler Biadasz signing made it crystal clear. While a lot of people thought Los Angeles might go hard after Tyler Linderbaum, the Chargers landed Biadasz on a 3-year, $30 million deal, while the Raiders gave Linderbaum $81 million. That gap is not small. It tells you exactly how this front office is doing the math. This is not about winning headlines. It's about winning on cost, fit, and room to move. But here comes the part that frustrates fans, and honestly, that's fair. Even after that, a lot of people still expected a true impact receiver for Justin Herbert, because right now the group is Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Trey Harris, and Keandre Lambert-Smith. Useful pieces, talented pieces, but still missing that one name that changes the geometry of the offense and forces defenses to back off out of pure respect. All offseason long, A.J. Brown was floating around that dream. Now, with reports pointing to the Eagles and Patriots closing in on a deal after June 1st, that dream feels basically off the table. And that's where things heat up again behind the scenes. Mo Moton put DK Metcalf on the list of players who could be cut or traded after the draft, and that opens a door that gets your attention immediately. Not because it would be easy, far from it. The contract numbers are heavy, and they are heavy for real. $31 million in 2026, $32.5 million in 2027, $34 million in 2028, and $41.5 million in 2029. That does not match the more conservative pattern Hortiz has shown. But football is not just about patterns. It's also about timing. Metcalf is coming off production that falls short of what you want from a true WR1, but the size, power, and vertical threat are still there to change an offense. And if Pittsburgh really starts rethinking his place after bringing in Michael Pittman Jr., the Chargers at least need to study that door. Maybe with 2027 draft capital. Maybe by waiting for the market to soften. The point is simple. If Los Angeles decides to go off script, this is the kind of move the building feels before the fan base hears it. And now we get to a layer of this that I think is dangerous for anybody trying to lock in the Chargers' plan too early. For weeks, people have treated Los Angeles' path like it's already settled. If Olavavega-Ioane falls to 22, take him. If he doesn't, trade back, get into the early second round, and try to come away with a guard and a rotational edge. It sounds clean, it sounds logical, but maybe the building is thinking in a much less predictable way. Joe Hortiz has spent this whole process repeating the best player available line, and normally that gets dismissed as classic pre-draft smoke. But when Daniel Popper hesitates to rule out a surprise, I pay attention. Because now the debate moves somewhere else. This is not just about patching a hole. It's about whether Los Angeles sees an offensive weapon that can change the shape of the whole attack. That's where KC Concepcion enters the picture. Popper pointed right at the kind of element the Chargers still don't have enough of. Somebody dangerous after the catch, fast enough to turn a short touch into a real gain, useful in the slot, useful on movement, and exactly the type Mike McDaniel could tap into right away. And that matters. It matters because an offense doesn't grow only by protecting Herbert. It also grows by giving him new answers. A lot of people will say using premium capital on a wide receiver would be a luxury. I get that. But draft rooms don't move only off the most obvious need. They move off conviction. If this front office really sees Concepcion, or even Omar Cooper Jr., as a piece that can change the rhythm of the offense, the shock could come right there at 22. Especially with Quentin Johnston staying, Keenan Allen still unresolved, and real competition still open in that room. And if the board doesn't push that scenario at 22, there's still another detail people around this draft conversation keep pointing to. Brennan Thompson and Zachariah Branch are the kind of profiles that could show up later without killing other priorities early. But the fact that this read even exists tells you wide receiver is more alive in this conversation than part of the fan base wants to admit. Maybe the most likely path is still adding that profile later. But if the right name falls, I don't think the Chargers will blink before blowing up everybody's expectations. And the fourth story is one of those topics that just keeps circling behind the scenes, even when the team tries to cool it down. The name is Quentin Johnston, and I still think a trade is unlikely. But I also get why so many people on the outside keep connecting the dots. Because when a young receiver still has market value, steps into a new offensive system, and the team still hasn't rushed to settle the fifth-year option, the noise builds on its own. The Chargers have until the start of May to make that call, and Joel Corey projected that option at $18 million. The important detail here is not just the number, it's the fit. Corey pointed out that a lot of this could come down to how Mike McDaniel sees Johnston inside this offense. And that changes the weight of the whole discussion. Because it's one thing for the front office to speak positively about the player in public. It's another thing for the new offense to truly want to build with him long-term. Hortiz and company have already shown confidence in Johnston's fit with McDaniel, but the market watches actions too. And so far, the Chargers have touched just about every offensive position group this offseason to bring the roster closer to the new coordinator's vision. Wide receiver still feels open. Ladd McConkey is the top target. Trey Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith are still working into the picture. Keenan Allen is still unresolved. And Johnston, cheap in 2026 before that contract jumps hard, becomes interesting both as a player to keep and as a name that can move around in draft conversations. That's why this buzz won't die. Not because Los Angeles is desperate to dump him, but because he represents value at a moment when the team has only 5 picks and may want to move up, move down, or recover capital. Now I want to hear the fan base on this one. Would you keep Quentin Johnston and bet on the fit with McDaniel, or would you use that asset to move the draft board around? Because that answer says a lot about how each fan sees the Chargers' real plan right now. So the picture coming out of all this feels very clear to me. The Chargers are heading into this final stretch before the draft with more paths open than a lot of people realize. And that might be the biggest advantage Los Angeles has right now. There's edge help gaining momentum. There's receiver moving back to the center of the conversation. There's real surprise potential on the board. And there's a roster asset that could turn into something bigger. None of this feels accidental. It all feels like preparation to attack the right moment. So stay with me through draft night, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which one of these 4 signals matters most for the future of the Chargers.